Well, hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in for this interview with my good friend, Brian Plachta. Brian is a writer, spiritual director, and speaker. He has a master's in pastoral counseling and is a frequent speaker at workshops, retreats, conference centers, and colleges on a broad variety of practical spirituality topics. He's an adjunct faculty member at the Dominican Spiritual Life Center in Michigan, here in Grand Rapids, and is the founding partner of Plachta, Murphy and Associates, where he practices law. Brian's passion is helping men and women discover their inner compass, the divine voice of wisdom in their souls. His blog, Simple Wisdom for Everyday Living, has over 1,000 subscribers. We'll talk more about that. And he's been sending a new blog post to, get this, he's been sending a new blog post to his subscribers every week since April 2016. He's also the author of 2 self-published books, Pillars of Steel, How Real Men Draw Strength from Each Other, and Life's Toolbox, Blueprints Included. I'm so excited to talk with Brian, to share his story with you, because I think it's going to be very encouraging to you. So, Brian, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chad. Yeah, it's good to talk with you.
Great. So, the reason I wanted to have you on is because there are so many writers who they know they don't have a big platform, but they're passionate about their story or their message or just their perspective, and they want to reach a broad audience. And a lot of the folks listening right now, Brian, are thinking to themselves, could I ever land a book deal? And I think you have a story that's very relevant to them. So why don't we start with a little about yourself and how you came to the decision to pursue a book contract. So I shared in the bio, but if there's anything else you want to offer in terms of your background and how that got you to a decision to pursue a book contract,
Sure.
that would be great.
Yeah, so yeah, it was about last January, about a year ago, a good buddy of yours and a client of mine said, hey, you got to meet this Chad guy. He's got this book proposal academy that he does and coaching. And it was one of those things I was pretty reluctant. It's like, I don't know, I'd written 2 books. I really enjoyed writing those books. But I did have a sense that there was something else in me, another book in me, and I didn't know what it was. And so at first Nate was the buddy, and I just said, whatever, but Nate kept kind of nudging me a little bit. And so finally I made a phone call with you and said, hey, I guess this is time to jump in, basically. It was interesting because, as a lawyer, husband, father, been married for 36 years and 4 grown kids now, I always felt there was another career in me, but wasn't sure what that was and where it was going. And I was doing writing kind of part-time and workshops and those types of things. But I wasn't really sure what the next phase was in my journey. And so that nudge, I guess, I'd call it a God nudge, is what really I finally discerned I need to listen to this because it's tugging at me, and it kept appearing 2 or 3 times. And so, yeah, so it was exciting. Yeah, I think at first I kind of resisted when we started the Book Proposal Academy, because my approach had been to write a book and then publish it, have an idea in mind. And I really appreciated, now looking backwards, that you said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to write a book proposal, basically. Which at first, again, I kind of like, really? That sounds like it's backwards, but it actually, I think, was the right way to go as I look back at that, basically. So, yeah. So, so it was kind of a leap of faith. Like, okay, maybe the time I thought I was going to wait another year or so to write a book, but it was that sense of, no, maybe the timing is right now and I need to jump on it. So, yeah.
So I think writing a proposal is useful regardless of whether you're self-publishing or going the traditional route. But certainly when you're going the traditional route, you need a proposal. And I remember as we worked together in a kind of coach-client relationship, I remember asking you at some point, what do you really want? And I remember you saying, I really want a book deal. Can you remember why? Because you self-published 2 books, right?
Yeah.
Why did it become important to you to pursue a traditional book publisher?
Yeah, I think it was one of those one of those things I've never done before because I was always self-published. I tried in the past to land a book deal with Pillars of Steel, and just realized probably the timing wasn't right. But this time it felt like, as I'm transitioning into more of a full-time writer and a speaker, it felt like, I do need to basically have a publisher behind me to add credibility, quite frankly, to my writing. Somebody that says, yeah, this is somebody that has something to say. A publisher believes in it, an agent believes in it, and so it was a sense of, it was the next step on the journey. It was a little scary, thinking, oh boy, what am I getting myself into? But what I really enjoyed in that process was what you had said to me is, we're going to have a conversation. So I'd write a little bit. I had an idea on courage I was going to write, and I had a little saying around that, and I would get all excited. Yeah, this is, I'd send it to you, and we'd have our phone chat, and it's like, not quite right. What didn't feel right. But it was really the process that was transforming for me, because it felt like you kind of drew the book out of me. And I remember the conversation that we had, and you said, well, what's one of your cool childhood memories? And I talked about the fact that I loved, as a little kid, going, when it rained, going outside in the sewer and unstopping the leaves, basically. And it felt like I was finding flow. And I remember you looked at me and went, that's it. I think that's the book that's trying to write itself in you. And so it was really amazing how that just kind of, it evolved, I guess. And yeah, the concept of having a publisher behind me was just that sense of credibility, that I can go into the world, really launch into perhaps the second career as a writer, but more importantly, to serve my audience with the workshops that I do and the books that I'm trying to write. So it really was adding the credibility piece, so that I can touch more people, I guess, a larger audience.
Yeah. So a couple things there: credibility and reaching a wider audience. I think both of those are important. I would be surprised, Brian, if when you work with a traditional book publisher, I would be surprised if the book you end up with isn't higher quality than your self-published books. It ought to be.
Sure.
And I do think you will reach more readers. Any book publisher who takes you on has a vision for reaching a readership, and so obviously they're gonna look to you to help promote it, but they're gonna have ways of reaching additional readers that maybe you wouldn't be able to reach on your own.
Yeah.
So I think both of those are really there are reasons worth considering. So if someone's listening and they're going, I don't know whether to self-publish or publish traditionally, I think Brian and I would both say we're fans of both methods. Like, we don't have a dog in this fight. But if you want the added credibility and you want to reach as many readers as possible, traditional publishing is certainly worth considering.
Sure.
So that's great.
Yeah.
So what was the most intimidating part of pursuing a traditional book deal?
Yeah, fear. One of the things that was amazing was that as we worked through the process over pretty much a 6 months or 7 months, not only was it helpful to get resources that you offered, like one of the books that I love that you pointed us to was Stein on Writing, by Sol Stein. I mean, it really brought alive for me, and really helped craft my writing and make it even better. But the other one that really struck me, and that's where the fear concept was The Big Leap, by Gay Hendricks. In fact, I even come back to that. He talks about there that we all reach our upper limit. I'm grateful I had have a 36-year career as a lawyer. I'm comfortable in doing that, serving my clients. I enjoy doing spiritual direction. But as I read the Big Leap, I recognized I'm bumping up against and being moved out of my comfort zone. And there was a lot of fear around that. And at first, I wasn't sure what to do with that. It scared me because it's like I'm Irish, so I kind of push through things. I'm like, what is this fear? And at times, it almost stopped me from moving forward. But I think really the Big Leap helped me understand what was going on inside of me as a writer. And then, so that fear, I guess I would say I befriended it, like, oh, that's a normal part of the process. And
Mm.
so I just need to push through that, basically. I think the other thing that helped me with that is you kept reminding us, why are you doing this? So I would have those days when it's like, oh my God, this is hard work. Why don't I just go back and, be a lawyer, for God's sakes, or be a spiritual director in a quiet ministry that I do. But it was like, why do I do this? And it was like, yeah, because I think I want to serve my audience, basically. And you kept reminding us, to serve our audience, and the rest will come. And so on those days when I was bumping up against my fear, I would say, you know what, I think I've got something important to say, and I'm just going to keep saying it as best I can, basically. So fear was the hardest thing that I bumped up again. Kind of the ego that we all have at times, like, but going back to that, okay, this is a normal part of the process. And fear is actually, I could use it to move into courage. As we push through that fear, on the other side of that is the courage that
Yeah.
does transform us. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. And I have to say that as a writing coach, sometimes it feels like 75% of my job as somebody who's working with a writer is simple encouragement. I
Yeah.
mean, yes, I have some expertise, some experience. Maybe I have a little bit of guidance for people, but some days it literally feels like 75% of what writers need is
Yeah.
just encouragement.
Yeah.
Um, and you're right, it's because of that upper limit problem that Gay Hendricks talks about. And we'll link to these books below the video, but that we all have this idea that I can go this high and no further, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Exactly.
he talks about how he sabotaged even, like on a physical level. We'll get sick even,
Yeah.
physically sick
Exactly.
if we feel like we're getting above that upper limit. So
Yeah.
that is really helpful. And I love what you said about how one of the things that helped you move forward was not focusing. You didn't say what helped me move forward was focusing more on myself. what you said was, in addition to just kind of befriending that fear, is wanting to serve your audience.
Yeah.
Like I believe in what I have to say. I want to serve people, and that, you said, was kind of a way to get through that fear.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the most inspiring things for me as a writer is when my Monday blog goes out and a handful of people email back and say, this really spoke to me today. This is exactly what I needed to hear. I mean, I don't care if it goes to 1 million people. I mean, I hope it does someday, obviously,
Right.
but the
Yes.
sense of just that there is somebody who, through my story, through, what I'm writing, they connected with a deeper universal truth that really hit them. Maybe the facts are different from my story that I wrote, but they're connecting with the truth that I'm learning along the way. This week was on introverts and extroverts. Basically, are you an innie or an outie? Was my blog, and it really is about that was a process that I didn't realize as an introvert. Having to live in an extroverted world, basically. And so it was cool that even today, Monday, I got probably a handful of people responded back. Yeah, I'm an introvert too. I didn't realize my need for solitude. Or I'm an extrovert. I don't realize how much I need to go into some quiet meditation, some silence. So that to me is the reward, is just someone saying, yeah, thanks. That really helped me grow deeper too. Yeah, that's if I can keep that in mind, it keeps that ego, at bay, basically, and the fear at bay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I hope you're encouraged to know that, like, there are a lot of people who benefit from your content that never respond with a
Yeah.
comment or an email back to you. So I mean, you've got to just assume that it's only a small percentage of the people who resonate with your content that actually go to the trouble of emailing you. So you're actually reaching quite a few more people
Sure.
than just the ones that email.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think about how many blog posts I've read and benefited from, but never took the time to comment. I mean, as a blogger, I'm a little more sensitive to that. So I try, try to like give a little kudo out to, whoever I'm reading. But I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
that's another thing worth remembering, especially if you're blogging and you're not hearing back from people. Like that does
sure.
not mean you are not having an impact. You are having an impact. So
Yeah. The other thing, I think the other piece that rose up with me in pushing to do the book was, when I was 16, my dad passed away, and there's so many conversations. He had cancer, and there's so many conversations I wish I would have had, with my dad as I grew older. And so part of me also says, part of my audience is my kids and my wife. That someday, that there's a book that one of my kids will pick up again and read that and go, wow, I didn't realize dad went through this, and this is what he learned. So the audience also, I think, is even more intimate, as well as a large audience, but also for my kids too. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And I know your grandkids are important to you. You just had a new grandchild.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there are a lot of different reasons to get a book into the world, like a legacy and for the sake of posterity. Like those are real reasons to stick with the process and get published.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, let's shift now and talk about your book concept. So maybe you could start with just what is the book concept that we've been pitching here. And we'll
Sure.
get to the
Yeah.
pitching process, but and how did you get to that? You started this story a little bit, but talk about how you got to it and what the concept is.
Yeah, yeah. So the concept, the name of the book, the working title is Finding Flow, Doable Spiritual Practices to Reclaim Inner Peace, Balance, and Wholeness. And like I said, it evolved. I didn't, at the end of the process, that became the book that birthed itself kind of in and through me, with your help. But it started as really more, I was going to write something about courage. That courage is something, fear, we have to push through fear to get to the other side of courage. We need to befriend it. And I had a bunch of stories that I started writing around that. But it wasn't resonating, as we would talk and stuff like that. And then during one of our monthly conversations, again, I told this little story about the Finding Flow idea. And it was like light bulb went on, I think for both of us, like, oh my God, that's it. And then as I continued to work on the book proposal around that, I recognized that there was a framework for that. You were really good about saying, readers want a little bit of a framework to be able to walk through any kind of a book. And the framework became kind of what I had just learned through some of the work I did with my pastoral counseling degree, is really taking 4 quadrants or lifestyles. One is the sense of solitude, that on a regular daily basis, to find some quiet time, to meditate, do yoga, go for walks in nature, just time to just quiet the mind chatter and listen more in that heart space. So that became one of the quadrants. And over here, spiritual reading, literally, are we reading books that are helping us grow, that are inspiring us to grow? So we can gain wisdom from someone that's a little further than us on the path. And then the third quadrant or third lifestyle is community. Who do you surround yourself, with, basically? I think one of the cool things about the Book Academy was we really formed community. I mean, and still I'm emailing back and forth with people in part of that. And there was a sense of camaraderie of other fellow writers. And so we could share our stories. So that community is another piece. Our families, our spouses, our spiritual friends, our churches, all who is in the community, a spiritual director, for example. So that was the third lifestyle piece. And then the last piece is contemplative action. Okay, now that I'm kind of connecting with my inner self and growing and transforming and have these pieces, what are my unique gifts and talents? And how in this season of my life am I being invited or nudged to put them into the world to make the world a better place? And part of that contemplative action is really, years ago, I stumbled upon a spiritual gifts inventory that really kind of helped me look at, oh yeah, I'm a writer, I'm an encourager, I'm a leader, I'm a facilitator. So it kind of helped me look at the big picture of my personality that I didn't realize perhaps, and then begin to move toward that. So it evolved, yeah. And then from that also, I've been doing workshops around that. I mean, you introduced me to Zoom. I've done now 5 Zoom webinars and have another one this coming Wednesday night. I've taken those 4 lifestyle pieces and done a 1-hour seminar on that, doing one at Dominican Center, and then later this year out in Connecticut, and hope to do more of those. So just letting the book come alive, basically. So it's really been an evolving a piece that just it kind of has transformed me, and the book, I think, has really kind of written itself in and through me, basically. So yeah, it's been kind of fun, scary at times, but fun. Yeah.
And a couple things on that. You said you went from a book on courage to this book, and that this book has a framework. It really offers readers a process that they can go through to, as you say, find flow and experience this inner peace and balance. So I love the fact that, first of all, it speaks to a real need people have. Like, people do need balance. They feel frenzied. They need some way of finding some stability. And so your book is promising, it's right in the subtitle, your book is promising to meet that need. It provides a process, which the courage book, as we worked on that, it felt, my old boss used to call it a string of beads. Like, it was just kind of random things, and it felt like it didn't have any kind of organizing framework. It's, as I recall, and it's been a while now, but as I recall, it felt like any one of those pieces could have been an article by itself.
Yeah.
Whereas your book, I mean, some of them you might be able to excerpt 1 or 2 as an article, but you really don't get the whole thing until you have the whole process. And then finally, what the other thing that I think is attractive about your concept is it's called Finding Flow. And so you're kind of picking up on these cultural conversations about the flow state.
Exactly.
It's a term psychologists, athletes, creatives use. And so people are interested in. There's a conversation already going on around what it means to enter a flow state. And you're saying, well, there's the spiritual component to this too that we need to consider. Yeah. And so, I think those various dynamics with your concept are, I think, at least potentially attractive to agents, to publishers, and readers.
Yeah. And the other piece was, I like to, when I read a book, I love reading books, but there's a sense of needing or wanting to integrate it, basically. Like, as I'm reading a book, I'm throughout the course of the day, and that spiritual reading, quadrant up here, that, I'm kind of chewing on the book. And what I find helpful for me is the practices then. How do okay, here's the concept, here's the story, but now how do I integrate that? How does a reader integrate that into their life? So one of the things, one of the stories in the book is, about just how I had this relationship with God as a little kid, and I had a rosary that I would swing around in the middle of the church, and I got into trouble, hang on, Jesus, going for a ride. But I lost that as I got older, that concept of God, that childlike, kind of went away, and I didn't know where I lost it. And so what someone introduced me to, and that's part of one of those chapters, is make a timeline of your life and go back to, in increments of 10 years or decades, what was the most significant thing spiritually that happened 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, and so on. Because as we look backwards, we go, oh, there's where God was. There's where Waldo, was in my life. Or here's, the death of my dad when I was 16 certainly was a sad thing, a hard thing. But I also saw where it helped me grow spiritually to really lean into God, as I understand God, as a really important part of my journey, basically. And so those practices is what my hope is. Again, the concept has story, certainly, in the four lifestyles, and the concept of flow, and then a practice that readers can put into and integrate into their own life. Because I hate it when I read a book and it's like, okay, I'm done, and you go on. Basically, it's like I want to chew on something and really begin to use the whatever the author is suggesting to help me go deeper, in my own life, basically. So yeah,
I love that part of your book too. All right, so we've got to discuss. No conversation about publishing is complete without a discussion of the P word, platform. So, and for anybody who's encountering that term for the first time, platform is the word I and many others use to describe any means that you as the writer have for helping to promote your book. So, how can you move books? How can you help the publisher sell books? So talk about your platform, Brian.
Sure.
How have you built it so far? If there have been like inflection points where you saw, a big number of new subscribers, in one fell swoop, those, readers will be interested in that, or viewers will be interested in that. But before you go on, let me also preface this by saying, I'm a firm believer that the number one metric for a platform these days is email subscribers. So when I'm working with a client, I'm building their platform, growing that email list is really my focus. And the reason is because there's no communication tool that's more effective yet than email when it comes to reaching a large number of people. That doesn't mean social media is not important. Social media is still very important. But your email list is a lot more effective than, for example, a Facebook post. So Brian and I worked a lot on his email list. So Brian, talk about maybe where you were, if you can, when we started, and how you've seen it grow, and any inflection points along the way.
Sure. Yeah. When I think of platform, I think of that concept: how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time? And
Right.
boy, building that platform, it really does feel like. And I think as I look backwards, it's what I recognize is it's about building relationship. I mean, I love it when I'm out of the supermarket, or and somebody goes, "Oh yeah, I read your blog this week, and I just love it." I mean, so you're developing that you're helping people, or there's a relationship that you're building. So back in 2016, I actually had a gal that was working with me doing some social media, and a nice gal. She's a student intern at Calvin College, and she said, "Well, why don't you start writing a weekly blog and posting on Facebook?" And so and then send it out as an email. Well, at first that seemed kind of daunting. I'm like, really, once a week? And so she said, "Well, how about I write that for you?" Well, after 2 or 3 weeks, it wasn't my voice. She was a great writer, but it wasn't me. And that was the point back in 2016. I says, you know what? If I'm going to do this, I need to write this and really get myself on a routine of doing that. So I hired an editor. I just did a thing on the kind of Google search for someone that was interested, and interviewed a couple, and found Sandy Tritt, who's been with me for probably about 5 years now. I've never met the woman. I just every Monday send her my email for the next week, and she edits it, and it makes it a little bit better, basically. But yeah, so I started writing that weekly piece, and that began to, it actually is something that comes out of my meditation practice in the morning. So it feels, again, just like the book kind of has evolved. It feels like I kind of sit there and, okay, God, what do you want me to write about this week? And usually it's what I'm struggling with on the inside, like being an introvert or an extrovert, or this one I just sent out today is on Are You Safe? About how fear is just such a huge part of us. So anyway, as I began to build that, then I added to social media, began to build the email list, but it wasn't really very big. I maybe had a handful of people from high school that I knew, and that. But I think you've helped me a lot in the sense of, how do you give something away? If you want to serve our readers, is there a lead magnet, as you've taught us? And it really became my Life's Toolbox book. I have that in ebook format. And so what I've really done a lot of is offering that ebook in exchange for someone signing up for the email, basically. So yeah, and that was a huge piece all of a sudden. I mean, I not only is it on my website and a little pop-up, but also on Facebook, I'll do an instant message to some of my friends, or and just say, hey, are you interested? I'd love to send you a copy of my ebook and my weekly blog. And again, it's a lot of work to do that, but it's fun when you get it. It's almost like fishing. You throw a bait out there and say, oh yeah, and then it's cool that they like the book and get involved. So that was the lead magnet, I think, was a huge piece. And then working with other writers, that's the benefit of us being in the writers group, because we're all, the 10 of us, we're all looking to build our email list. And so, we've done guest blogs on each other's posts, offered my ebook on other other writers' websites. Again, but that concept, how do I build relationship and how do I serve my readers? So it's a work in process and will continue. But so yeah, building that relationship and offering a lead magnet. How can I serve you? I think the third way, and what I saw was when I offered that lead magnet through other writers' websites, there I saw a huge spike, because all of a sudden I'm reaching a ton of other people and already have the credibility of who's ever sending the blog out. They already have their relationship. Oh yeah, well, Brian's got this book too, and so people are interested. It's like that kind of pass the mustard, test with who's ever sending the blog out for me. But the other is the workshops that I'm developing. What I plan to do and have been doing is literally offering the Life's Toolbox book, the hard copy of it, free at a workshop that I do, live workshops. And just say, the quid pro quo is, I'd like you to write down your email for me, and when you pick up a copy of the book. So again, that concept of how do you build relationship and how do you serve people, is primary, I think. So yeah.
That's great. Those are great. Really talk about integrating practices. Those are 3 great practices: instant messaging people via Facebook, doing guest posts, or, just partnering with other writers. And the third is live workshops and getting emails at those. So those are great practices that anybody could, anybody who's inclined in those ways could do to good effect. And I love your emphasis on building relationships. A lot of writers, when I start working with a writer, they'll say, I'm not about that platform building stuff. Like, it's really not about me. I'm about building up others. And I was like, wait a minute, you're making all kinds of assumptions when you say that, because your platform is about building up others. Your platform isn't about you. Your platform is for the purpose of reaching other people with your message. And the other thing, I always get on my soapbox and talk about all the other things that are being advertised out there, some of which are not very edifying. And yet those companies, those people who promote those things that are often less than edifying, don't have any reservations at all about advertising and promoting. And here Brian Plachta has, or some other writer will have something that's really valuable to share, and yet they're a little hesitant about being seen as self-promotional, and it just kind of drives me crazy.
One of the things that that encouragement that you offered is, you have something that the world needs to hear. We all have a unique story, a unique understanding, and I think that was the encouragement. Each one of us as writers, we've been given a gift, and it's like, wow, really? What am I going to do with this gift? A long time I didn't know what to do with it, but that's an encouragement. If you've been given a gift, put it out into the world, because you never know who you're going to impact, with that. So, I think that's been an important piece that you've encouraged all of us is, the world needs to hear what it is you're writing about, and you never know how it might touch another heart. So,
Yeah, and initially there may not be a lot of external validation of that. You just have to act on faith in some ways. We should mention that the group you keep talking about is Book Proposal Academy Elite. This is the group you joined, and that's what prompted us to start working together. And then that's also what it sort of instantly gives everybody in the group a supportive community of other writers. And then, of course, I coach the group to partner with each other in growing their platforms, and in other ways too. I think there's all kinds of interaction that happens there. But that really brings us to my next question, which is just to talk a little bit about the process of writing your book proposal. How long did it take, and what was that process like?
So it took about 6-7 months, I think. Once I got the concept, the finding flow concept. I think Stein on Writing was one of the most valuable books I've ever read, because he talks about the importance of story. And, you know, I think sometimes I would, when I was writing the book, all of a sudden I'd be into theory. And it's like, and my wife actually would look at me and go, "You're into that theory stuff again." And it's like, you know, that works in a textbook and in some styles of writing, it's great. But I think one of the things that in the Book Proposal Academy talks about is, you know, we'll remember stories forever, basically. You know, the story of grandma and grandpa doing this or that, or me flying a rosary around in church and my parents, you know, chastising me a little bit. So that was, you know, really an important piece of writing the book proposal was, what's the story that fits within the context of what I'm trying to say? And then also, how do I make this story short enough that it's not all about me, and oh, aren't I wonderful? It's just enough snippet for the reader to engage with the story, but ultimately get to the meat of the universal truth or practice that's being done. So, yeah, so you know, the practice was literally, I think, first of all, was a discipline to say, you know, I'm gonna write. I set a schedule for myself every Monday morning for a couple of hours on Tuesday, you know, so really creating a schedule, I think, was important. That, okay, if I'm going to do this, I better get some self-discipline around myself because I'm easily distracted, you know, because when the writing gets hard, basically. So I think the other piece that was helpful, I think it's Elizabeth Gilbert has a thing, a YouTube or a TED Talk on the muse. That and that was something I found very helpful. Is, you know, the writing isn't who we are. It's almost like there's a muse out there. Call it, you know, the divine. Call it God. Call it the Holy Spirit. Call it a muse. But there were those times when I wasn't sure what I wanted to write, and I would kind of speak to my muse. I actually had a little a doll of a tiger that I put on my little stuffed animal that became my muse, basically. So I'd kind of have this conversation with, what are we writing today? It's like, this isn't working real good. Yeah. So recognizing that there's something outside of us that writes itself in and through us. So that self-discipline, finding the story, also asking myself, what am I trying to say? You know, what am I, and going back and editing again. You know, does this make sense? Is it clear? Yeah. So yeah, it took about, I would say, about 7 months to get to the final book proposal. It was exciting when it was done. It was like, wow, you know. And then it was helpful. You had suggested finding a graphic designer to not only do a Word format of the book, but also the graphic design of it. So I was fortunate to find a guy that just did a really good job, I thought, in creating a designed book proposal that is part of the proposal out there too. So yeah.
Yeah. And we, of course, you know, as part of that program, we do these 2 group calls a month. So I'm kind of showing you examples of other book proposals and kind of coaching you through that process. So did you find that helpful, Brian?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. So we, you know, those phone calls that we would have, you usually have an agenda, and you'd walk us through, you know, here's where, first of all, I think there was an accountability piece of it too, was where are you at in your book proposal? Not that you were chastising us, but it was a sense of, oh yeah, am I working on this? There's a call coming up this week. You know, how far am I, basically? But yeah, so you kind of gave us the steps to work through it. And then we talk about that, you know, through the Zoom call that we did as a group, which was really, really helpful. I think the other thing that was really helpful was we had the face-to-face weekend that we did at Meyer Garden too, where we had us all come in and we spent the weekend. So it was cool to actually meet the people that we've seen on Zoom all across the United States and Canada. I think one of our gals is from Canada. And really face-to-face, you know, spend some time with them. And that was amazing. And then again, you brought in the publisher. I think it was from Baker Publishing.
Yep.
And kind of talked about, you know, how do you do this thing, basically, and stuff. So
Yeah. That was a rich experience. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so let's keep moving here. So eventually, what happened is you finished your book proposal. Like you said, you got the graphic designer and I can't remember. You had it edited too? Didn't you? Copy edited?
I did. Yeah, the same gal that I used for my weekly blog. I also sent it to her and had her edit it. Correct.
Right. I think both of those steps are really you've spent so much time and energy into writing that proposal. You might as well spend a little more in the way of, financial resources and get a copy edited and get it designed.
Yeah.
When you figure the possible return on investment, I think it's worth it to do that.
Yeah.
And then you pitched your proposal to me. So I was working with you as a coach, but I also here and there do some agenting. And so you said, Chad, would you consider this? Would you consider serving as my literary agent? So I did.
Yeah.
And I decided to represent you. I felt like for your kind of book, I felt like I had the connections to find a good network of potential publishers for your book. And so I agreed to do that. And we're currently, right now, we've been pitching your proposal, and we're hearing back from publishers. So what's that process been like for you?
Yeah, that's been, again, that up and down. Sometimes well, first of all, it was exciting that you agreed to serve as an agent, because I think what the guy from Baker Publishing had said is, the majority of writers who don't have a large platform yet, about 1% are going to get a book proposal if they don't have an agent, and you increase your chances. He had said, if we do that. That was exciting when I had said, yeah, Chad, would you be interested in taking a look at that? It just was validation that, okay, there is something here. As a writer, I'm moving beyond my upper limit now, as the Big Leap book says. And so it felt really exciting to do. I remember the day that you called, you left me a voicemail. Hey, Brian, this is Chad. Give me a call when you get a chance. And so, of course, I'm like, oh, God. He didn't want to leave a voicemail saying he's not going to accept me as a client. And when I called you back, like within 2 seconds, it's like, you said, yeah, I'm really interested in working with you. So that was just, talk about one of those moments of gratitude. I was just filled with, tons of gratitude. And then as we put the proposal out there, it was interesting. I thought, the one thing that was really nice is the majority of publishers that have responded so far have said that they like the writing. The platform, again, is always their concern. And like I said to you, it's like, you just need someone who's going to take a chance on you. I'm going to work hard, do the workshops and build my audience. But yeah, you do need someone to take and there was a couple weeks ago, we thought you sent me the email that said that was interested possibly in taking a look at it. It sounded like they were interested. I think there's another one. And they said they'd be back in a week. And of course, they didn't quite get back as quickly because their editor was out or whatever it was. And so that weekend, I just crashed and burned. Like, oh, I suck. So it just, again, I had to go back to, why am I doing this? It's, it's all about serving people and serving my audience. And if it's meant to be, so I had to kind of go through this letting go process of, it's meant to be, I will be done and let it, I've done my work. And then, yeah, when we got the email back that at least at this point, there's at least one that's and maybe more that are interested. It was, yeah, just a real sense of comfort, I guess, gratitude and comfort. Like, wow, someone really believes in the message that I've been writing about. And so, yeah, just a lot of joy around that. Yeah, but again, the ups and downs of, why do I do this and get back into the studio and write, Brian? And then there's also the fear of, okay, now that I have 6 months to finish this book, basically. That's a little intimidating. I hit another upper limit, at the Big Leap, but recognize, yeah, like all of us, you just keep pushing through that limit just to continue to move out of your comfort zone. And so when the time is right, I'll sit down again and go. I think the other thing that's been helpful for me is finding a place to write, so that it's a place away from the noise and distraction of the house and everything. So having a studio to write in, whether it's at home with a door you can close or a separate place, office you go to. So, but yeah, it's been exciting and like anything else, it's unfolding.
Yeah. Well, I'll make a few observations too, because, I know from spending 20 years in the publishing industry, that platform is important.
Yeah.
And so I talk about that with clients and just with readers of my blog. I'll talk about how, the number one reason publishers turn books down is too small a platform. And we've certainly seen that as a motif among the responses we've received. So it's just sort of like, it's a reminder to me of, because obviously what you get from writers is a lot of pushback. As a coach, when I'm telling them about that, I will get pushback. I will hear from writers who say, if I worry about that and writing, it's just too overwhelming. And I'll say, and it's like, and sometimes I'll say, yeah, it is, you're right. And like, it's a reminder to me to like, no, be the coach, be the one who says, I don't want you to be overwhelmed, but I also want you to know this is really important. If your goal is to get a book deal, you have to figure this piece out,
Yeah.
because otherwise it's unlikely to happen. Now, like occasionally, very occasionally, there's a concept that's so strong, and maybe the writing is so strong that the platform, you can kind of get you can kind of get around that. But that is the exception that proves the rule. The rule
Right.
is you need an ability to reach readers. And so, getting these responses has been kind of it's been a reminder to me that you have to keep these writers in check. You've got to, as a coach, I have to not only keep encouraging them but keep equipping them
Yeah.
to build their platform. So that's been interesting to me. And then of course we did get some great news. You have an offer in hand. I mean, this is the thing that writers just hope and pray and dream about. And you have one, and that we're still not done with the process. You might get some other offers. And so, and as you say, that kind of fills you with gratitude. And it is huge validation that there's a house out there that sees a wider audience and wants to collaborate with you.
Yeah.
I have one more question for you, but any more observations along those lines before I ask my final question?
Yeah. No, I think it's been an amazing ride. Transforming on the inside as a writer, and very much so, and a neat process. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so big kind of question to end with. So having gone through this phase, this process, Brian, and being where you are now, and I wanted to capture this now, kind of while we're still in the midst of everything, because
Sure.
I wanted to catch it while it was fresh for other writers. So having come to where you are, what advice would you have for anyone who wants to pursue this dream of getting a book deal?
Yeah. Three things come to mind. One is don't give up. If you love to write, I've often, there's a phrase, I can't remember who said what the quote's from, but writers write not because we know something, but because we have questions and we're writing to get the answers. And so even if the writing is just fulfilling for yourself, that's exciting. As I'm writing blogs, I'm learning about what I'm writing. I'm researching. I'm looking in my own self and stuff. So my sense is don't give up would be the first thing I would say. Just keep pushing through and keep writing, basically. The other would be the practical thing. I think in 2016, when I got an editor for my blogs, I think getting an editor to look at, if you're putting stuff out in the world on a blog or whatever it is, if you can financially afford to get someone to edit it, I know I've learned a lot from my editor. You've been editing my stuff too, which is helpful, in terms of the book proposal, but in terms of the blogs that I do, I think the editor has just been amazing, and I've really appreciated Sandy's work on that. So that'd be the second piece. And the third piece really is serve your audience. When you have those times, why am I doing this? Just say, because I have something that's important to say. I'm giving voice to a piece of wisdom within me, and I just want to serve my audience with it. And so put it out in the world, however it unfolds, basically. So that, and the last would probably be, a fourth thing would be, find a coach. I would not have a book proposal, I don't think. Certainly my editor was helpful, has been over the years, but I think, without a good coach, I don't think I would have the book proposal that I have. And that, just like when you go and play basketball or any sport, basically, you've got a coach. that's there, teaching you and so try this, try that. No, you got to look harder on this. I think a writing coach is invaluable also, and it's really been a blessing to be able to walk alongside, have someone walk alongside you with that. So those would be the, one, don't give up. You have an important message to serve your audience with. Get an editor, and yeah, get a coach to keep you encouraging you along the way.
Yeah, well, the blessing has gone both ways. It's been a joy working with you, Brian, and I'm glad we get to continue working with each other, and it's going to be so fun to chase this book out into the world, and to find a beer with you somewhere and and celebrate. It's going to be a lot of fun. So, Brian, just one more thing. Where can people, if they want to engage with you further, you mentioned you got a free ebook. Where would people go to find those things?
Sure. So my website is www.brianplachta.net. So BRIAN, and then my last name, Plachta, PLACHTA.net. And if you go to that website, it has all my blogs and some background on me and spiritual direction and the different workshops I do. But after about 5 seconds, there's a pop-up that says, hey, get a free copy of my Life's Toolbox ebook. And if you enter your email, you'll get shortly thereafter an email with you can download the ebook, Life's Toolbox, and also sign you up for the weekly Monday Simple Wisdom blogs that I send out.
Awesome. And as somebody who gets those Monday morning blog posts, I just want to encourage anyone watching this, you will not regret getting Brian's emails in your inbox on Monday morning. They're a great way to start the week. So, all right. Thanks, Brian. Take care.
Yeah, take care. Bye now.